Steve, episode 52 of the Broadway block. Today on the block, we're going to talk about Henrik Lundkvist's new role as an MSG advisor, and we are going to go over some trade destinations for the unhappy Niels Lundkvist. How do you feel about the Niels Lundkvist situation?
And it's kind of alarming, right? That over the span of a few years, we've had quite a few prospects be unhappy here, request trades. Niels especially, I would probably have to agree with him a little bit. He doesn't really seem like he has a spot. I feel like those roles are kind of carved out that are ahead of him. So Fox, Lindgren, Truba, Keandre. I mean, there's a long list of guys. And if he's looking for that spot, if he's looking for that power play time, it just doesn't exist. And he was highly touted as a prospect. We never really saw that like true coming out party for him. The only thing that we have to be excited for is what people tell us. But it's challenging because again it kind of takes away that value that you have in a trade. Jury's kind of shown to just sort of not you know do anything about it just yet. Even back in the JD Jeff Gordon days, like when, Tony was like, I'll play somewhere else. It's like, it's not really up to you. So hopefully we kind of ignore it if that's the answer. But it is a little bit upsetting because now you're either forced to make a move or you make the situation possibly worse. So I don't know. What's your take on Neil's situation?
Well, I agree with you in the fact that, we have Adam Fox locked up for the next 8 years. So where is he going to be the number one power play quarterbacking defenseman that he wants to be? Like he's right. Um, was he good enough last year to beat out Braden Schneider? No. Am I having a problem with prospects not good enough to compete on the North America level and then having some kind of problem with like, being forced to go down the AHL? Yes. Um, Also, this kind of is another problem that's been forming that, when we sent the letter, the infamous letter that we were going to, familiar faces were going to be changing, um, we got a lot of return back for that. So that 2017, 2018, 2019 draft, we had a lot of picks. Um, I'm hoping the 2018 draft is not cursed because we picked Kravi at 9, Keandre at 22, and Niels Lundkvist at 28.
And felt pretty
Obviously,
good about it.
I felt pretty good about it. Going back, I was like, this is great. We're loaded up on defensemen now. Kravi's this winger. Like, we're ready to rock. But it hasn't been panning out that way. So back to my point, like also I hope nothing happens with Keandre with the contract because then forget it. 2018 is like a cursed draft class if that's the case. And hopefully when Kravi comes back, everything's water under the bridge and we can forget that. Um Something I did hear about the Niels Lundkvist trade is that supposedly Drury was offered a second round pick at the draft and did not accept it. Someone also I've been reading that it was from the Habs. So yeah, shocker. But I just I don't want to see him go for nothing, but I also don't want to lose out on opportunities that like, he's not gonna play. We gotta get him out of there and we gotta get him to somewhere where he can play and we
Yeah,
get
well,
a
like
good return for him.
it shows that there's enough interest, but like you said, like you don't want to just take an offer just to take an offer. And you never know, man. Injuries happen all the time. Like we said this in the earlier episodes, but I feel like this is a team that can really kind of show some weakness on the depth if we run into some injuries early on. And I don't want to like single anybody out because I don't want to put that voodoo out there. But if it happened in his position, I mean, it would, what's he like the third, second? You know what I mean? Like he's not really like the first man up in that situation either. So it really would be a long shot for him to make the team. It would take a lot of unfortunate other happenings for him to make the team. So I can't even say that like I want him to like stay on the team. You know what I mean? Like I kind of want what's best for him, which may be on a different
I
team.
I agree with you there. The only other thing is we do have him locked up for 2 years, which, like, for us being a team with strapped on cash, like, you don't want to give him away for nothing because, we don't have a lot of people on those entry level contracts that, like, if, like you were saying, if something happens, he's like, CDE plan. But it's not fair to Niels Lundkvist that, he's missing his opportunity as a young 22-year-old from, you know, Europe coming over here, thinking that he was going to get a shot, thinking that he was going to get a role on the team, and then not really having a role.
I think it also shows like where we're at, like where we used to evaluate prospects compared to where we do it now. And just using Othman as like a recent example, not the most recent, but I feel like he shows, we already had left wingers, we already had this sort of player already. Shouldn't we have, picked maybe a positionally player like he was kind of the best person available in that moment. So like I think the way that we used to evaluate prospects has changed, and what we're looking for right now is just like, maybe like you said, we cash in on this entry level contract in a year from now when we're on a strapped kind of budget. But you go with the guy that maybe doesn't make sense in the moment, but you're not thinking about the moment. You're thinking about 4 years from now when you need someone who can just kind of come in and perform on a cost controlled contract. So we'll see. And those bottom spots aren't necessarily spoken for, I would say. So there is still room, there is still potential, but I don't think it translates to what type of ice time that this person's looking for, and the way that they were touted, it hopefully seems like there's a role somewhere else for them to flourish. But hopefully we don't get burned on it. I think Kravtsov represents, you kind of mentioned like, hopefully that's water under the bridge. I think if you're him, you just don't do anything that's out of the ordinary. You show up, go to work, and if you're lucky, you put up some points and there's some interest in you and you can get out of the situation also. Um, but there's still potential for that to not work out as well. So I mean, for me, I think it would be great if we can get something out of a craft style for sure, and to salvage the rest of that draft, like you're saying, because you know, minus
I remember
Keandre.
feeling, I like you said, like I remember feeling great about that draft and being like, we are set up on defense for the future. Like this team is going to go places.
And who would have known that, here's
We're
David
going all the places you don't want to go.
yeah. That, and Truba's now the captain. I mean, so much has changed. You get Fox for
Kreider
everyone
threw
knew it
up
was a
50.
steal.
Kreider threw up 50 in 2022. Like
Nobody could have predicted. I mean, I
Igor
think
won a Vesna.
well, that I think has been pretty
That
well
that
foretold,
yeah,
like
yeah.
uh some of his numbers look like, if you simulated a season on NHL 22 or some shit. Like it's pretty and if you even going back to the KHL, I mean, I think I just read he put up the fourth best save percentage in like league history or something. I mean, a nine through their first however many seasons, but 935 for through last year.
Also helps that when you have Henrik Lundqvist as your guy, like teaching you the ropes of the NHL.
And don't forget Benoit Allaire. I mean, there's reasons why he's where he's at, but also sky's the limit. I mean, people really sleep on this guy still. After his playoffs, after his regular season, I mean, people for some reason there's still some layer of doubt, but I think his
I,
contract is going
I
to
I
prove to
think
be a
that's
steal.
perfectly fine for Igor. I think that's actually better for him because he'll play with another chip on his shoulder again this year. That, like, he's the guy. He was the voted the best goalie in the NHL, and I think he's going to prove it again that he's the best goalie in the NHL. I
I
think
think
he's
it's
I think he's going to silence all those Vasilevsky lovers, and they're going to be like, "Wow, Igor is going to be a problem for years to come."
well, he's a Vasi lover himself, and like he was
Well, you
when they
got you got to respect it. When you're in that position as a goalie, like you respect the other people who do your job well.
I mean, he was quick to, I mean, humble in that, quick to say that Vasi's the best goalie in the until otherwise when we were up to nothing, and maybe that's where you get a little bit of the competition, and maybe that's where you get a little bit of the realization that like, on any given night, any given Sunday, these teams have a chance to to always beat you, and you kind of have to like respect your opponent. The minute you lose respect for your opponent is, the quickest way to get an upset. But I think all's good as far as the future of. I mean, that contract's going to prove to be a steal in a little bit. It's going to be probably cap hell in about 3, 4 years from now. But as far as where we're situated, defensive wise, I think we're, you know, on the cusp of some X factors. Like it's really going to be up to guys like Kraftstoff and guys like Blaze to really pick up some of the slack that's going to be seen, in my opinion, from the deadline boys that are kind of all now departed.
All gone. They're all gone, boys.
Oh
But that
man,
being said, I think a lot of people are overlooking or not, with like, Truba becoming captain, Keandre Miller having the playoffs he did, Adam Fox being Adam Fox. I think a lot of people are not looking at like Braden Schneider's gonna be pretty good. Like he's gonna hit people, he's gonna shoot, and he knows how to play defense.
the thing for me is that when we drafted him, we drafted him with that reason to have like a
You
snarl
were
and play.
excited. I remember the text. You're like, Braden Schneider. Okay. I just looked up
And
his shit.
all the
Like
highlights of this kid are
you're like,
just
he's a hitter. Like I like this kid. I was like,
this
okay.
guy plays with a bit of a bite. But what I think is gonna I think what we're gonna need is those guys that aren't afraid to shoot. And we said it about Keandre. I'd love to see it from guys like Lindgren, who might surprise you if that's who you see, if you're the opponent, and that's who you see with the puck. So I would be really encouraged to see some of the defensemen start to shoot the puck a little bit more. And I think even Schneider is a guy that could start to unload a couple and start surprising people. But um, for me, it's like the future looks bright, the present looks bright. You can't you can't get enough of when the only flack that you can see is like, Lundkvist never won a cup. It's like, I'm looking ahead, brother. Like it doesn't
It
it
happened. He
has
didn't win. He
nothing to
didn't win
do
one.
with
I'm
it.
with you. He didn't win one.
And
But what about Igor? That's what I'm
right,
saying.
and I think it's like when that's like when you know that that's where you're at, and you know that you're in a good spot, then that's all you can cling to is the past. And for me, it's like that's what there is to be excited about, is that this year looks great, next year looks great. And I think that we're tickets purchased for opening night, we're gonna be we're excited now. We're excited for even a month away. It's less than a month away now.
29 days. You ready for that?
And just
October
chomping at the
11th.
bit.
Fun,
And the guys are too.
fun fact: October 11th is Alexi Lafreniere's birthday.
Oh
He,
wow.
he will be 21 on opening night.
Good for the young lad. Hopefully
He'll be a man finally. Do
hopefully
you
I
think
mean
he'll be man enough to play on the power play, Steve?
for fuck man. I hope he
21. You're
does.
21. You're opening day.
Yeah, I mean, does he grab that spot opening night? Is that what you're asking, or does he hold on to it, eventually? Because
I'm gonna let you spiral with whatever way you want to go. Does he grab it opening night? You tell us, Steve. Does he grab it like midway through the season? Does he
like
not even grab it?
the answer is the like the end of the dominoes. It's like if that happens and this happens, so then who's your second power play center is really what it comes down to. Because if Trocheck is on that power play, number one in the spot that we're talking about, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense if Heedle's your second power play center, in my opinion, unless Heedle's off to the races. So to me, it makes more sense for Lav to be in that just naturally, because you need Trocheck likely on that second power play. Then it doesn't
Which
necessarily.
I like Trocheck on the second power play for the player who he is. A shoot first mentality. He's gritty. He keeps the puck in the blue line. Like he's someone you want. He finds the open man. He keeps the puck moving around. He also is very good at shielding the goaltender, like kind of like a Kreider position. He gets right in front. He's not fun to deal with right in front of you, and he
Good
makes
on
stuff happen.
face-offs.
Yeah, good on faceoffs.
What I so like, to get back to the laugh thing, what I think is going to happen is I think he's going to hold on to that number one spot for probably probably a month or so. There's going to be some play, I think, in that, and and he's going to get a shot on that bumper spot. I hope he like to me, it doesn't necessarily matter if you hold on to that number one role. I want him to see time up there. I want him to have success, obviously. Don't forget he's going to be in a contract year, and it's going to be tough to pay all these guys. So like I think he's gonna get time up there. But I think if he gets time everywhere, that's gonna be important. I think they're gonna look at him in maybe a shorthanded role. They're gonna look at him maybe in a second line power play role at least if he doesn't hold on to that number one spot. And I'd like to see him get a little bit of time in that bumper spot, and hopefully some first or second line wing time. I mean, again, is it we mentioned this about Kako, is it the worst thing if he plays the third line and we get a scoring, third line winger so we can kind of roll all those four lines? Is that the worst thing? No, but I
I
would
think
I
we
would
gotta.
really
I no, I agree with you. It's not the worst thing, but I think to accelerate and kind of give us like like a ripcord of like we got the younger guys taking over the roles that he's got to play up on that second line minimum. Like yeah, maybe if he is not performing as well as we saw him in the playoffs and as like the last uh few weeks of the regular season last year, yeah, you scale him back. But I think that goal is to get him up there and keep him up there and let him play with like the stars of the NHL, in the first and second lines.
yeah, and I think he naturally scores. He's gonna have those plays where he just kind of was the last person to touch the puck, and I think and you get assists that way, and I think that that's good for your confidence. I think that just being out there when the goals are scored is enough for certain guys that aren't always a part of the action. But when you look at the way that Laugh plays, he's always in the mix. He's always wants the puck on a stick. He always wants to make a play with it. He's not scared to shoot it. He's not scared to make thread a puck through sticks and through feet. So I think playing with those
Or talk
guys.
to Dylan Larkin. Go directly at your captain and put it through the legs, and there you go. Hey, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm still playing that clip, man. It's
Uh,
it.
it's
What I
always
want to
mentally
see
playing in my head.
what I want to see is that level of confidence that day, coming out there scoring two after being benched. I want to see that level of confidence. I think a little bit of being on the power play and like I said, just being out there when the goal is scored, that's going to have a lot to do with that confidence because a part of you is going to feel like, oh, I was out there and I was meant to be out there, and like you know, um, who who if someone beats him out for that spot, is it Krabby? Is it Kako? Is it not necessarily a player? Is it Panarin going to that top spot? Is it not necessarily somebody beating him and him just not excelling in it? What do you think happens in that winger role?
Oh, I'm a guy that comes from like sporting background, best man up. Like I think it really comes down to these next couple weeks in camp and preseason to really see um, who's ready to go. Like, is Krabby in North American NHL hockey physique? Like, is he ready to play? We don't really know until we start seeing him in the preseason. Um, is Kako like the ready to take on the next role and really use this bridge deal to like prove to get his money in his bag and like become a real NHL winger? I don't know. I to be honest, there's too many storylines. I think we'll see kind of as the season starts. If I had to say it right now, I'd probably say Alexi Lafreniere is probably the best winger up for that position as of right now. But that was from watching him in the playoffs and the last couple weeks because we've said it. I think so many episodes we've said it. Like every game we watched Laf play, he just got better and better. He got more NHL like time, and he looked like an NHL like a could be an NHL star.
When you um when you look at the way he played, do you think that that's the chemistry he had with those other two, or do you think it's something that's worth holding on to some of that chemistry? Bump up a guy like Laugh and Kako with a player like Trocheck, or do you think that it's worth him having all that sustainability all by himself? Do you think he can sort of have that chemistry with Kreider and Mika, or
Well, they play a different game, but I also think Alexis Lafreniere's game is he's kind of a electric young guy getting out there, excited to be out there. So I think there would be some adjustment if he played with a Kreider or a Mika out there to like really, figure them out and their game. But I think he could play with anybody. I think I think he will be an NHL star in the league. I just think, you got to get used to it. Got to get used to the day in, day out of being on the top lines and playing good hockey.
So final answer, laugh in the top role, clinging on to a playoffs or to a power play spot and finding chemistry on the top line. I mean, that's all we can hope for. I feel like that sets a
I think
second.
I think there'll be some bumps in the road where he goes back down and like, like what did you say when we were at Kids Day and wasn't it the game before Laugh sat? You're like, watch him come out today. Like he's never sat in his life. Like watch him come out today. He's not the type of player. Like from me, I get the vibe that like if you sat Kako like that, he'd kind of be like, all right, like yeah, like that, like hurt his mentality. But I saw
I
laugh busted back, like, and he had one of the best games of the year for him.
I kind of like completely get that vibe from Kako too. Yeah, you gotta. Every coach has to kind of speak to their players a little bit differently, or each player has to be spoken to differently. But I can see Laugh taking that as fuel, whereas Kako takes it as maybe like an insult, you know. But don't
I
forget
will
that
go
happened to
back to
Kako.
the homeland.
Yeah, don't forget that happened to Kako too, by the way.
I
Like
know, I know,
like
I know.
real recent.
But
Like
he didn't we don't remember the bounce back games because it really didn't we didn't really see a bounce back game like we saw the on Kids Day like with the Red Wings.
you
Like
didn't get this. I mean, this
I,
game six,
exactly.
and I mean, does that motivate? It's too much time off. I feel like, it's like I wish we could have got a game seven bounce back game out of that, but we'll see, man. I'm super
What
excited.
here's an even crazier question. Would if we had won that game 6 Eastern Conference Finals game and Gallant looked like a god that he sat Kako and we ended up bringing it back to New York, would you have continued to sit Kako? Or would you have put him back in that like we got to get him ready for the finals, like the Eastern Conference Finals, and
I'm
keep him
really
moving?
glad that we don't have to think about that
We
until
don't,
next year.
and no
Yeah, I mean,
questions. I played the fifth.
yeah, I'm oh man, because I'm horrified to believe that, there was a little bit of that like allure, I feel like back in like the AV days about just like, he'd be like, well, I'm excited to mix it up. And then we'd go out there and like win like 5-3 and we're like, keep it going, but how much of that is just like throwing a Hail Mary and celebrating when you win. But yeah, if that works, he's the GOAT. But man, I hope that we can get a good performance here out of Kako as well. But hopefully that's the last time we see him getting benched.
I hope he comes out stronger, better than ever. Kind of like with that, like all I can think of is like when people say Capo Caco, I think of that Adam Fox goal with that pass right in front of the net and he just spoon fed it right past him. That's what I'm looking for out of Caco all year. Those kinds of plays.
There was about 15 seconds right before um one of the goals in the playoffs, and you see him getting nasty. He's pushing somebody in front of the net, and there's a quick little pivot. He switches and he goes behind the net, and Laugh sneaks in and scores that goal. Um, with Kako feeding him from behind, and it's like it's little stuff like that I look at where he's not, he guess he gets the assist, but he doesn't get the credit for sort of like setting the play and setting the tone that like he was being bodied and he stood up to it. I feel like as he grows into that body and as he can sort of maybe absorb some of those things from a guy like Kreider, because if he's not playing on his line, someone's got to replicate that style of play throughout it. I mean, he's got all the tools in front of him. It's just, that confidence maybe is the issue. But
Just can't wait for the weeks to click down.
me too, man.
We're almost here for this preseason hockey. I can't wait.
It's getting here. But we'll chat soon, brother.
All right, thanks, Steve. Have a great one.
Thanks, man.
Let's go Rangers.
Let's go Rangers.